as you know, today we're going to be talking about creating accessible education materials in the school environment. My name is Jen Skalitzky. I'm from Infinitec. I've been in Infinitec for about over 15 years now. And prior to that, I worked at a special education co-op on an assistive technology team. I currently provide assessments in the area of reading, writing, and I also provide trainings and work with membership services. I've been in the field for over 20 years, and I truly love what technology can do for all students. So my goal today is to share with you some foundational information about AEM, the law, and then also how you can provide accessible educational materials. Now I'm having an interesting glow here with my camera, so I am going to stop my video, but I do encourage you to type in questions, and we're a small enough group. If you would like to go in and verbally ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself. We're nice, small, and intimate. I actually know what county you're from because you all said what school district you're from. And I should mention this is not only brought to you by Infinitec, but a grant that we have from the Illinois State Board of Education, where we go across the state and provide free assistive technology trainings on a variety of topics for high incidence to low incidence and universal design for learning. So if you're looking for some professional learning for your district, feel free to reach out as we provide some as well. All right, I just saw a chat. And Matt, just let me know if you see something in the chat. I'm happy to do that. I provided the handouts in the chat earlier, and I also have this link up here, and I'll leave this open for a moment. Now, it's really great to have an electronic handouts because I have a number of resources that are hyperlinked. So if you simply just click on that link in the chat, it will take you to my slides, and then at a later time, if you wish, you can explore the additional resources that I've provided for you. And thanks, Matt, for helping me out with that. So let's start out by talking about accessible education materials. In terms of education, a lot of times what we provide our students can be barriers for those that have print disabilities. And that could be something as simple as text, something we see on a computer or websites. So we have to remove those barriers and make sure our students are receiving accessible educational materials. And CAST is a wonderful website that provides a myriad of resources and also does an excellent job of explaining it. So you're going to notice a lot of my information comes from CAST because I just love the way they explain things. So accessible education materials defined are print and technology-based educational materials, including printed and electronic textbooks and related core materials that are designed or enhanced in a way that makes them usable across the widest range of learner variability, regardless of the format. And that includes print, digital, graphic, audio, and video. Now, the main thing I want you to take away from this definition is that it includes the printed material and electronic materials as well. Now, some examples of accessible education materials and examples of accessible technology. You may consider that, think of something that you see every day, such as the picture here on the upper right, which is a Braille. That is a form of printed materials in an accessible format. Now, the picture right below it is accessible digital materials and technologies. And we do also have to remember that just because material is presented digitally does not necessarily mean that it is accessible. And I want to break down it even further to make sure we're all on the same page. Now, printed materials can be converted into specialized formats. Now, if we think of our standard printed materials, we have textbooks, we have manuals, we have workbooks, and we have printed documents. We can then convert them into 4 specialized formats, which are actually highlighted by IDEA, which I'll go into momentarily. And then we can convert them into the specialized formats, which are Braille, large print, audio, and digital text. Now, again, to lay the foundation of vocabulary, digital materials are inclusive of websites, ebooks, videos, and media. And again, just because something's digital does not mean it may be accessible. Then we look at the technologies part of that definition. And there's the hardware and the software. The hardware is the actual device, such as a Chromebook, laptop, or mobile device. And then the software is what you're using. So that would be something like a Google Classroom or Microsoft Word or Google Sheets. And you also may be wondering, who can receive accessible educational materials? Who qualifies for accessible educational materials? And it's an individual with a print disability. Now, there are way more words on this slide that I like. But again, when you talk about eligibility, they're very strict parameters. So I want to make sure that we have every single word included and there's no gray spots here. So IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, defers to the National Library Service, Chafee Amendment, the Copyright Act. So an individual who has a print disability can be an individual who is blind, has a visual impairment or perceptual or reading disability that cannot be improved to give visual functional sustainability equivalent to that of a person who has no such impairment or disability, or is able to read printed works to substantially the same degree as a person without an impairment or disability. So those are a lot of words, but an example would be an individual who has dyslexia, or finally is otherwise unable to physically disabled to hold or manipulate a book or to focus or to move the eyes to the extent that would be normally acceptable for reading. So an example of this would be an individual perhaps who has a physical disability such as cerebral palsy. They're unable to turn the page in a typical fashion. So they may need a book on a computer to assist them in navigating that material. Now, this is really important. Now, who can diagnose someone with a print disability? It's certified by one of the following. I'll read it out to you and you can follow along. And I don't want to leave anybody out. A doctor of medicine, osteopathy, ophthalmologist, optometrist, psychologist, registered nurse, therapist, professional staff of hospitals, institutions, and public or welfare agencies. Now, this is the really important part that was just updated in 2001. Such as an educator, a social worker, a caseworker, a counselor, a rehab teacher, a certified reading specialist, a school psychologist, a superintendent, or a librarian. Now, in the past, it used to be a medical doctor, and that could have, well, I know for a fact it was a barrier for a number of individuals in order to get that diagnosis of a print disability, because perhaps for whatever reason, they were not taken to the doctor to receive that eligibility status. So now individuals at school, and I just rambled off a huge paragraph of staff that can certify them, can then certify them as a print disability. So that really helped remove some barriers for our students so they can access accessible educational materials. Okay. Now let's take, we went over the very formal definition of AIM. I also broke down that formal definition of AIM so we understood the vocabulary inside that definition, and I provided information as to who qualifies. So now I want to tie it together a little bit and talk about what this actually looks like. So this is an example of digital material and technology and a student that qualifies working together. So this is a student on a Chromebook, right? Everyday situation that we come across. Perhaps the student uses speech to text to navigate their computer in order to make it accessible. They may use a built-in screen reader. Perhaps they have dyslexia. They may use customized display because they need a larger font for vision reasons. They may need Bluetooth in order to connect their headphones so they can listen to the screen reader or use the microphone for speech to text to navigate their computer. Also closed captions if they have a hearing loss, or perhaps they use video descriptions. So this is an example of what AIM looks like for a student with a print disability. Now, I also want to cover one more thing before we dive even further into the law. You may have heard of the term AEM, and Jen, you keep saying AEM. So what is the difference? I've gotten this question a lot, so I thought I'd just throw it out there before anyone asks it. So AEM is mandated by IDEA 2004 for K through 12. And it required state and local agencies to provide specialized formats of print materials, right? Lovely. But then in 2015, the name changed by CAST, and it was coined AEM. And it's really important because now this also includes print and digital materials and technology. If you think about, 2004 tech to 2015, just a couple things have changed. And the also very important factor is this now includes post-secondary education and the workforce. So this is really helpful for our students that are college bound or entering the workplace. Now I want to take a deeper dive into the legal requirements for AIM. And again, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat or just go ahead and simply unmute yourself. Now the legal requirements for K through 12, and since that's what we're going to focus on today, are these requirements, but also know adults and secondary are also covered under the law. But for K through 12 students, we're going to take a look again back to the Individuals with Disability Education Act, IDEA. And what IDEA gave us in 2004 is that it requires state and local agencies to ensure accessible versions of instructional materials to students with print disabilities are delivered in specialized formats in a timely manner. So whenever we provide materials to our students in the classroom, we have to also make sure that they're accessible. And that may mean Braille, large print, audio, and digital text. Now, you also may be wondering, what are the steps for providing AIM? How do we provide AIM? And we always like a process. And one thing that CAS gave us is a really nice process to follow. It's a simple 4-step process, and I thought I'd review this with you today. So according to CAS, they give us a really easy 4-step process. The first one, right, is to determine the need. Does the student need accessible education materials? The second step is to select these accessible formats that may be needed. The third step is to acquire those accessible formats. And finally, to provide supports for those accessible formats. So let's take a look at each one of these steps closer. Step 1, determining a student's need. And again, this is a team decision, whether it's assistive technology for reading or for writing such as this, it truly is a team decision. So when we're determining a need, we're pretty much basically asking the question, does the student need AIM in one or more formats? What data should the team consider? So maybe you're going to be looking at reading assessment scores, some diagnostic evaluations. Perhaps you have some teacher-related service provider observations, conversations with the student or family. So it's very similar data that you probably already have at your fingertips. So now you're just looking at it in a different light in order to determine if a student has a print disability and if they need AIM in one or more formats. And if you folks, the team, it's not just a single individual decision, it's a team decision. If the team has determined the need for AIM, then you're going to move to the second step, which is selecting the accessible formats needed. Now, there's a number of accessible formats, and some students may need more than one format based on their type of print disability. So there's audio, there's Braille, large print, tactile graphics, and digital text conforming with the accessibility standards. So you can see here that there's a number of different accessible formats that a student may benefit from if they have a print disability. And then you would select those accessible formats. So what do they need? Do they need digital text? Do they need audio? If someone with dyslexia, they may need accessible digital text, and then they may need some audiobooks as well. And this resource I'm going to share with you momentarily gives some really nice checkpoints. You're going to look at the consideration of the full learning context. So you're going to look at all the environments of where the individual needs to access text. And you also are going to provide some trials in a range of the different formats. You want to make sure that you always try out technology before you figure out if it's the right one or not. Many times you may need to try something different or tweak something, so you conduct a trial. Also, the selection of the formats needed. And then identification of the text-based educational materials of the curriculum. So what Are there any text that I need to make sure are converted into an accessible format and from the curriculum so the student can access it? And then match the formats to the educational materials. So one resource I want to share with you, and this is absolutely free and it's absolutely a fantastic resource, is called the Protocol for Accommodations in Reading. And it's called, for short, it's called the PAR. And it's by Denise DeCos and Linda Betzani-Wilson. And the PAR helps you determine the most suitable reading accommodations for your students by looking at their specific needs for an evidence-based approach. Now, a lot of times we may provide an accommodation, such as the student may need, audio or have something read to them. This is really going to provide some data to help you lead you in the right direction. Have any of you folks ever heard of the PAR? You can just type in the chat, yes or no, or unmute yourself. News to me, I love it. Carolyn says no. Oh, I do see we have a new participant. I'd love to hear where you're from and your role. Okay, Tommy says no, Missy's a no. Well, good news then. You're going to learn something new today, at least this, and we love that it's free. So you can download it from Don Johnson. It's about a third way down on the screen, and it's a complete everything you've ever needed and more. So there's 3 basic steps in the PAR, and I'm going to go through this with you, but of course, when you have the manual, it provides you with these steps in detail, and it also gives you all of the reading passages that you need. So when you're conducting the PAR with a student, the first thing you're going to do is have the student read, and you're going to have them read at their independent grade level. And this just establishes a baseline on the student's reading speed and independent reading level. So if a student's in, they may be in a different grade, but their independent reading level, even though they may be in 7th grade, maybe at a 3rd grade level. Then you have an adult reader, and this adult reader helps indicate comprehension ability when listening by an adult reader while reading grade level text. So now I'm going to jump up to Jimmy. I said that Jimmy is in 7th grade, so I'm going to have an adult reader read 7th grade content. Even though his independent reading level is at 3rd grade, I'm going to jump up the adult reader to see if by providing a human reader or adult reader, that will help increase his comprehension of the text. Then the 3rd step is a text reader. So you're going to have the computer read to the student at their grade level. So again, I'm going to have a computer text reader read to Jimmy at the 7th grade level. This helps indicate reading comprehension to see if really having a text reader helps increase that comprehension. So it's a really helpful tool. Again, it is going to give you some data to determine if we should be exploring an adult reader, if we should be exploring a text reader. And of course, there's times where if students aren't answering those comprehension questions correctly, you may move up or down certain levels with the adult reader or the text reader. More times than not, I'm blown away at students can then can comprehend text at a higher grade level than they're reading. So it really goes to show that providing text to speech or an adult reader can help remove that barrier, and then they can have access to information. I think that text to speech is one of the most underutilized tools that we have our students using. They're on every single one of their devices. Now, I'm going to pose a question for you. Many times, like I stated, students are able to comprehend text at a higher level when they either have it read to them or a text reader. What do you think we should really be working on with our students as their ultimate goal in terms of an accommodation, an adult reader or text reader? What are your thoughts on that? You can either throw them in the chat or you can verbally unmute yourself. Do you think we should be working on our goal being an adult reader or a text reader? Any thoughts? And maybe you don't have thoughts, and I'll share my thoughts. Great answer, Carolyn. That's one of the many reasons. A text reader because of the lack of staffing. Well, that's a very valid point. Sadly, not just statewide, nationally, we are at a shortage of teachers. We're at a shortage of paraprofessionals. So we may not have the staff readily available to read to them. Any other thoughts? That's a really good one, Carolyn, and a very text reader due to student being dependent on adults. Shows them how to use the resources they can use. Exactly, Misty. That's exactly ways to self-advocate. Exactly, Jacob. I think both of those are really valid answers, Misty and Carolyn. Yeah, we really want our students to be independent, right? Our goal is for them to be able to do things independently. And that's one of the core definitions of assistive technology, which we're touching upon today, but not really the main focus, but is to increase independence. And I always say to my students when I'm working with them, their preferences are always important. I always ask them their preferences and why whenever I'm conducting an assessment. But I really say to them, if it's not a text reader, and even if they do prefer a text reader, I'll congratulate them, because we want to foster that independence. We can't follow around. And I tease, I say, do you really want me to follow you around and read to you? And it's also important because when we have an adult reader, we tend to give hints and cues. I know a coworker of mine has a daughter with a learning disability, and she went in to take this test that she didn't study for. And my coworkers thought, oh my God, my daughter Kate is going to bomb this because she didn't study. And I know she didn't. Well, Kate got home and reported that she got an A on the test. And my coworker was shocked and kindly said, great job, Kate. How did you do so well? Because you didn't study. And she said, oh, I went to Mrs. Johnson's class. Mrs. Johnson always reads the tests and gives hints when it's the answer, right? Great news for Kate to have an adult reader that helps her, but really what good does that do? That text reader is not going to assist that. We all have good intentions. We're all guilty of it, but we really want to work on that and having them provide a text reader. Sorry, one of my soapboxes, I'll get off the topic now, but this is a free resource, great to download. Anyone can give it, pretty self-explanatory on how to do that. All right. Yeah, toned completely. And the woman had good intentions, Carolyn, and we're all guilty of it. But are you sure that's the answer? Or B, and then you really slowly exaggerate the answer, or C. So yeah, you're right. I see one more in the chat. Exactly. Right. Yeah, we've all done it. We've seen it. Okay. So I mentioned before AT trials. And when we want to trial out any form of assistive technology, whether it's for reading or writing, we also want to have a plan. If we all know what happens when we don't have a plan, if it's not written down, people don't have roles assigned to them, it's not going to happen. You may come back after a few weeks and say, oh, I thought you were doing that, or you're supposed to do that when. So it's helpful to have plans. I gave you a number of plans, more than you probably ever wanted. And it's at this live link here. It can be a plan for implementing any form of assistive technology. But all these plans, whatever one that you choose that I gave, all answer these basic WH questions of what tool is it that we're using, right? That may be obvious, but who's going to support it, right? Everyone kind of points their finger at somebody else. But if you're writing it down, you know who's going to support it. Also, where is it going to be used? Is it going to be used in specific classrooms? Is it going to be used in specific activities inside that classroom? So it's really important to have a plan in place. And these are not complex plans. They're something that you can fill out in 10 minutes or less. As long as you have your goal, you can make a plan and carry out that action. So I think this is a really important piece of any form of AT, not just for reading. Alrighty, let's move to the third step. So the materials required in accessible formats needed. So where do we get this accessible educational materials? Well, we can get them pretty basically from three main categories: accessible media producers, or AMPs, publishers, or local conversion. Let's dive deeper into here and give you some examples. So here are three primary source accessible media producers. You may have heard of some of these. The first one is Bookshare. I think Bookshare is one of the most another underutilized tool. It's a federally funded, absolutely free program for all individuals who have a print disability. And it can be someone with dyslexia, blindness, cerebral palsy, or any other reading disabilities. And they have textbooks, they have novels, they have Braille formats if you need something converted then and printed up. It's a great resource. They've updated in the past few years, so it's really easy to navigate. That used to be a hiccup for some. And I even know kids that log in and grab their novels or grab the books to make sure that they have it. So it's a really great resource that you all could be taking advantage of. The next one is Learning Ally. Learning Ally has been along for a long time. Now, I know I sound like I kind of just trashed human reading. I am not. I personally subscribe to my own library for audiobooks and Audible. I love audiobooks. And some kids still do benefit from having text read by a human. And this is a great resource for Learning Ally. Now, Learning Ally, there is a fee associated with it. And again, it's only audiobooks. And there are some grants across the state of Illinois where your districts can get it for free. And then the third one is Lewis, which is from the American Printing House for the Blind. And they have a myriad of resources. It's the database that you can search. Anyone using any of these three accessible media producers? Not seeing anyone, throw it in the chat. Not me. All right, well, maybe you will know. Very good to have these in your back pocket, especially the free ones, right? Now, I'm going to throw another one at you. Now, if you are school age, which all of you are because you're on this call, there is another resource for accessible media producers, and it's called the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard. Looks like standard got cut off. I'll fix that. Or otherwise, you may hear it called NIMAS. And this was part of IDEA 2004. So it's been out for a really long time. Again, another wordy slide, heads up. But again, when we come to these accessibility standards, we get pretty formal. So it's a standard that's cited in IDEA 2004. I mentioned that. And this is a technical standard. And this is a technical standard used by textbook publishers to produce their material so it can be easily converted into a specialized format, such as Braille, large print, audio, and digital, right? Those are the four main categories. And how this works is that this requirement is placed on state and local education agencies, meaning the schools, to provide AIM, not the publishers. So the textbook publishers have these files, they submit it to submit them as NIMAS files. And it's really up to the school, though, to make sure that the students have those files. It's not up to the publisher. And the purpose of NIMAS is to help increase the availability and timely delivery of instructional materials in accessible formats. So if you think back to 2004, when this first came out, this was a really big deal because there wasn't much out. It was primarily NIMAS. Now we have some other options, but this is still a helpful resource. Now, on the flip side, we have the National Instructional Materials Access Center. So what's the NIMAC? Well, I'll tell you. Again, same federally funded since IDEA 2004, and it's the online repository of source files that are published in the NIMAS format. So the NIMAS files, which are the files, are then given to the NIMAC, which is the center that houses them, right? Makes sense? And the NIMAC has over 160 K through 12 educational publishers that have submitted to them. So clearly the publishers are very familiar with this and are submitting files. And there's more than 71,000 NIMAS files available in the NIMAC Center. So a good chunk of files there. And NIMAC accounts are available to authorized users, accessible media producers, state and local education coordinators, and publishers. Told you lots of words. However, not everyone qualifies to access files at the NIMAC. There are eligibility standards. So back to the original eligibility standards of print disability, right? Hopefully all of you are familiar or semi-remember what I mentioned earlier. So we're going to look at the individual who is blind. I'm going to summarize this. This could be the individual who has a reading disability, such as dyslexia. And then this other third one, again, I'm going to summarize it because we went through it in detail, is the individual who has a physical disability and perhaps can't manipulate a book or use their eyes to focus on that textbook. But then the second stipulation is you must have one of those 3 bullet points plus 2. You must be receiving services under IDEA. So if you have a student who has a 504, you cannot access NIMAS files. However, you certainly can access Bookshare. You certainly can access Learning Ally or the Lewis files. NIMAS is just one other additional resource with an extra parameters. So I'm a visual person. So I have put this visual here and it's underlined. So it's hyperlinked. And let me show you what this looks like. So just to show you what this looks like, because sometimes I feel like when I first learned about NIMIC and NIMAS, it was a little confusing, but this is a visual. So if you're obtaining materials or AIM in Illinois, how does this work? The first question is, do they have an IEP? Yes or no? And then based on how you answered that, you can go through the flow chart and see, well, if you have an IEP, oh, right away, I know that we can access NIMIC files, or we can go over to other accessible media producers. And then also this column here, if you don't have an IEP, there's such as college students, there's a number of resources where individuals can access accessible education materials. So we think this is a really nice graphic that states it pretty simply. As I'm going into a lot more detail, this summarizes it. And you have access to that handout, that link right here. So that's helpful. Okay, another resource for accessible education materials would be the publishers. You can check if the textbooks available through the AMP, such as, for example, Bookshare, or you can go through the publisher. Now, in these slides, this is really helpful. We don't have time to go into detail, but what I did was I hyperlinked. If you are someone in charge of purchasing textbooks, you want to make sure that you have the NIMAS purchase order and wording in your contract. So they submit that accessible format, the NIMAS accessible format. And then also if you need to purchase web-based materials or software, other apps, this is additional information that you can put in to request accessible materials to make sure that's in the contract. So I wanted to share those resources with you. Now, again, we don't have time, and this is an awareness level, but I want you to be aware that, of course, you can convert your own materials to make them accessible. And and there's also tools out there to help you make them accessible. Microsoft Word has its own accessibility checker, and I've hyperlinked it for you here. PowerPoint has its own accessibility checker. You can go to the hyperlinked underneath there, and I've also given you some videos. Google Docs has a couple of them. One of them is Grackle. It's an extension. It's not perfect, but it's a great place to start. Sometimes I will put my stuff in Microsoft Word because it has a more robust word accessibility checker, and then I'll put it in my Google Docs. So these are great resources when you're creating documents to consider. I know this comes up all the time on another listserv, and this just came through. A lot of teachers use Teachers Pay Teachers, and I don't blame them. There's a lot of great content that's up there, and it's either free or low cost, and it can be really helpful for teachers and for students. However, the problem is that there's a specific teacher who had a number of kids with print disabilities in her classroom, and she was using some slides. Well, the slides were just images. They were not text. So she could not have a screen reader read that because it was just images. So they were working on converting those slides into making them accessible. So something to think about. Okay, step 4, provide supports for the family, student, personnel, and family. This is a really important step. I think sometimes we don't train staff enough, and we don't train students or families. So we want to support that use. We want to make sure they understand how to use the technology in the accessible formats. And that training can be for student, personnel, and family. It's not just for that student. Sometimes homework needs to go home. They're going to need assistance with that. Also, there may be instructional strategies in teaching that technology use, in using it to maybe comprehend text better. Maybe we have some highlighting that goes along with reading text out loud. Also, support services. We want to make sure that if something goes wrong, which it will with technology, that we have a plan in place. Who does my student call if the technology is working? What happens when it's broke? So we want to provide a range of support services. Then, of course, we may also be using accommodations or modifications in conjunction. So we may be also providing some extra time, or perhaps if it's a math problem, we may be reducing the number of math problems that are being provided to the student. So a lot of things to think about when we're providing that technology. We just can't hand it over. We want to make sure everyone is on board and knows how to use that technology. So I mentioned a resource that I wanted to share with you. I never gave you the name because I was waiting until it was time for me to pull it up. And this is a really helpful resource to support teams through that 4-step process that we just reviewed. And it's called the AEM Navigator. And they've had different versions. CAST has had different versions of it out throughout the years, but it's a really helpful collaborative tool as it helps teams as they work through the AIM-related needs of the individual. And it's downloadable. They not only is it a one sheet, but they also give a to-do list. They also give some examples. And I'm going to open it up for you. I want to show you what it looks like on the web page, so you know. When you go to the link, it's going to take you here. And then you'll notice if you scroll, here are all of the links that you can download. There's the download the student summary worksheet. There's a sample to help you. There's a to-do list. And if you want to dive into North Carolina's, you can. But let's just take a look at the blank one. Now, the blank one opens up as a Word doc. Of course, you can upload it as Google Slides if you'd like as well. And here's the student summary worksheet. And I don't mean to make you dizzy, but I want to show you how brief and how helpful it is. It's 5 simple pages, but it takes you through those 4 steps. So what's the student's name? Who's involved, right? First step, determination of need. There's some checkpoints. Step 2, selection of materials, right? Everything that we just went over. And it reminds you of things that you need to do. And you have to make sure, for example, you record information about the student current skills, need, and preferences. Preferences are huge. Preferences are important, especially when it comes to screen reading and text-to-speech. You want to have them pick out their own voice and their rate. Record information about the environments and so forth. So you can see as it walks you through the trials, and there's other things to consideration. Just a really helpful form. And I know in the world of education, you don't have time, and I know you don't, want another form to fill out, but as you can see, it's quick and it will make sure that you don't forget everything. And as you are new to this, it could be a really helpful resource. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, there's a nice little snapshot of it. Okay, so another thing I want to share is we talked about training assistive technology, right? Well, I also want to mention the competencies of assistive technology. These competencies actually came out of some work that was done with Buchelman and Light on augmentative alternative communication. But then Korsten, Zabala, and Reed took these AAC competencies and then converted them into basic assistive tech. So I think as we're teaching students to use technology, we need to take these into consideration. This is another one of my soapboxes. Mine is text-to-speech, student preferences, and competencies, just to name a few. But, one of my biggest pet peeves is when I hear, oh, kids are so good at technology. Well, what kind of technology are kids good at? Kind of answer that question in your head. I'm going to guess some of you said Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook is for adults, so I can't use that one. TikTok, right? They're not good at using technology to increase their independence and comprehension. Although I could be wrong, there are some. But so there are 4 competencies to consider when you're working with students. And I'm going to give examples related to text-to-speech and reading. So the first one is operational competency. Can the student turn on and off the technology? In most cases, we can teach this pretty quickly, right? We can check this off the box. The second competency is functional competency. So can I turn on the text-to-speech, and can I do I know how to highlight a sentence and have it read back to me? That would be the functional competency. The strategic competency is, oh, this is a really long paragraph and this looks difficult. I'm going to use text-to-speech to have it read back to me. Or maybe I don't need text-to-speech because these are just a few words on a worksheet. So you strategically know when you need to use your tool and not use your tool. Now, the fourth one is social competency. And that one has to do with having the ability to be an advocate. And if a teacher says, no, you can't have something read out loud to you, then what you could do is say why you need text-to-speech, why it's covered under your IEP, why it could also be a civil rights issue, and why you need to have access to it and it's not cheating. Or maybe explaining to a friend why you use text-to-speech. So being able to use it, in a social situation and being a little bit of an advocate. So those are the competencies, and I think that we need to keep these in mind as we teach children to use their technology, especially as they get older, right? We want them to use it and have all four of these competencies. Okay, so now I've mentioned text-to-speech. I thought I have a few minutes left to share some technology to support text-to-speech. Again, one of the number one tools that we can use for individuals with print disabilities. It's well documented that one of the number one disabilities are individuals with high disabilities and text-to-speech. So I thought I'd share this. Again, this is an awareness level. We don't have time to dive into everything, so I'm going to share a few things. The first one, I mentioned this earlier, all of our devices have it. Here in Text iOS, you can increase your text size. I know these are wonderful universal features I have on my phone. I know I have my text and size increased. I'm getting older. I also have content spoken to me often. I'm a great reader, but again, I like to listen to it at times. But if you have someone with a print disability, it's imperative that they have these settings turned on. You could show this to all of your kids. It doesn't just have to be those kids with print disabilities. I've also taken a quick video so you can watch this at a later time. But did you know that you can scan with your phone and your iPad? So let's take a look at how this works. This is just a quick 50-second video. The first thing you're going to do is open a new note. Then select the camera icon in the upper right corner and choose Scan Documents from the drop-down. Align your document just right, and then click the white button on the right. You can also resize your corners if you'd like to adjust. When you're done, click Keep Scan in the lower right corner. Then save. Then select your document. Then select the text you'd like to be read out loud and highlight. Once you highlight the text, select Speak.
Affect and effect sound a little alike, but their meanings are different.
So that's a quick tip. And of course, you can watch that video again if you'd like. And then I know we're not here to talk about writing, but I could also have it
the first thing you're going to do is open a new note.
Trying to do too much at once. Also, your Chromebook, another great tool that has wonderful built-in accessibility, universal design features. I'm not presenting on a Chromebook, so I can't show it to you. But this Google slide here, not only did I embed a video, but I also, if you prefer text, I included a website that would link to text. So if you're a reader, you can go there. If you're someone that likes to see it in action, go there. But what I like about this video is it not only shows you how to do it, but it also takes you into the settings, and it shows you how you can adjust those settings to make it talk faster, to make it talk slower, to have a different voice. I know it wastes a lot of times. Have the kids go in there and play with all the voices. Let them pick their voice preference. It wasn't that long ago, I worked with an 8th grade student and I conducted the PAR with him. And I always conduct an interview with my student. And one of my questions are, have you ever tried text-to-speech or have the computer read to you? And he said, no. He said, no, he said, yes. And I said, did you like it? And he said, no. And I said, why didn't you like it? And he said, it talked too fast. So right away, I was like, oh my gosh, I thought in my head, I can easily fix that. So when it came time in the PAR to have the computer read out loud, we spent extra time making sure it was the right rate. This student was able to comprehend text at the junior level. He was in 8th grade when the text was read at a much slower rate. And he was so excited that he did so well having text read to him, and that it slowed down, and that also reminded me, if you haven't noticed, I'm a very quick talker, that when I was working with him, that I needed to slow down my rate as well, because I talk fast. It was just better for him to process at a different rate. Another tool that you can use, and this you can use on a laptop, you can use it in Microsoft Edge browser, you can use it in the Chrome browser, is something called Read and Write for Google Chrome. It's a great universal design tool, or a tool that you can use to have text read back. A number of great features. It's free for teachers always, and then it's free for students. And then after 30 days, all the premium features go away except for the text to speech. But let me show you what this looks like. Throw in the chat a yes if anyone is currently using Read and Write for Google. So I'm on a web page here, and I'm going to open up my Chrome. I'm on Google Chrome if you haven't noticed, and I'm going to open up my extension, and it's a floating toolbar. Here it is. Oopsie. It wants me to allow. And you'll notice there's a lot of tools on this toolbar, right? I'm kind of shaking it so you can see it. I can reduce the number of tools on this toolbar, so I just have a few shown. But I'm going to show you what it looks like when I have text read out loud. And I'm just going to do one sentence.
The old adage goes that March comes in like a lion, out like a lamb. Many of the new books coming this month tend toward the lion side of the equation.
Okay, and I can change that voice. I can change that rate. I like the way it highlights. It highlights the whole sentence as well as the word to help with fluency. I also have, just as you know, a dictionary. So if I don't know what a word is, I could look it up. I can also have that read back to me. If it's a picture producing word, I can click on Picture Dictionary. Some kids it's helpful, some kids it's not. It really just depends. Some other helpful reading tips and tricks are that I can translate into another language. I can also have a tracking bar. I can adjust colors and size on that. I can also highlight text. So if the main idea is in yellow, maybe I'm going to do supporting ideas in green. And then when I'm ready to write about this, I can take those results and it's going to collect my highlights, and then it's going to throw it into a Google Doc. It's doing it right now. I can tell that it's thinking, and it says it's going to allow me, and I'm going to say yes. So now when it opens up that Google Doc, it gives me those highlights as well as the website that I got it from. So those are just a few of the features to help support with reading. Now let me clean up these highlights. Actually, I'm going to show you one more. It's so hard for me not to show you all the fun features. So I'm going to highlight some text. I'm going to pick some random vocab words. And, and it doesn't matter the color so much. I'm just going to pick 4. Then pick basic vocab. Now, this could be a teacher's trick or student trick where you want to pre-teach your vocabulary before you read something. So now what I'm going to do, that's going to get messed up. I can tell you right now. Because I didn't highlight, I said, okay, there we go. Now I'm going to collect these vocabulary lists. So now, before, if you remember, it took all my highlights and it put it in a Google Doc. Now it's going to put this vocab list in a Google Doc. So now with a click of a button, I have a vocab list of the words I'm not so sure of. I get 4 definitions. Maybe I want to talk about the month of March. So I'm going to get rid of all these other definitions, and I can also get rid of the pictures. It leaves a section for notes as well. So you can see with a click of a button how nice that was. Isn't that amazing? It's almost magical. So I wanted to show that to you. And it has a few other features for reading and writing, but I just want to highlight a few. I see a question in the chat. Yeah, thanks, Matt. I agree. It's so wonderful. Great tool for all. Again, it's free for all of you. It's free for educators, and I'm assuming all of you are educators on this website one way or another, whether you're a social worker or OT. And then after the 30 days, again, all the premium features go away, such as the ones like highlighting, but the text to speech remains. So if they really like the voices and they really like the way that it highlights, more power to them. And then they could keep it, as an adult. Orbit note, here's another one. Again, hyperlink to go to here. We are not going to get away from worksheets. Kids are always having to do worksheets or annotate on PDFs. So Orbit Note is a very nifty extension for Chrome. Here is a worksheet called Maya's New Backpack. So this is a great way to take all those inaccessible PDFs. It will then scan it and do an OCR and make it accessible. It's by the same company. So if I want to read Maya's New Backpack, I'm going to highlight the text and hit play.
Maya's new backpack. Maya was excited to start the new school year.
There's also the dictionary features. It's by the same company. I can also do some tracking if I wanted, not as fancy, but it's a PDF. And then of course, because you have to annotate, you can certainly type your name in there. So I can type text as well. Read my paragraph and come down and answer those questions. So really helpful in terms of reading and writing to making text accessible. That one is Orbit Note. I threw this in here. I'm not on Microsoft Edge. As I mentioned, I'm in Google Chrome and actually on a MacBook, so can't even enter here. But Microsoft Edge does have a read aloud feature. They have an excellent read aloud feature. And this will take you there and linked. Sorry, I can't demo everything on every device. All right, so I gave you the basic definitions. I gave you the basics of the law. I kind of gave you some 4 steps and parameters to get started, a little teaser with some tech tools. But now you may say, oh my gosh, now where do I get started? Where do I go next? I mentioned how much I love CAST. This is a great place for your next steps for all of you. So if you go to this link on what's your role, you may be a K through 12 leader or educator. So perhaps you're a teacher who creates instructional materials. Perhaps you're a teacher who selects apps. Perhaps you're a special ed teacher. Perhaps you're the last person. You're looking to improve the accessible materials and technology for all students. So those are your next steps that you can take. Obviously, I gave you some resources, but if you want to really get specific about your role and aim, I thought this was a great place to kind of end the presentation to prepare you all for your next steps. I also wanted to let you know that every state has an AIM contact. Ours is Lori Clampett, and here is her contact information. And I just wanted to give a minute to reflect. Think about, it's not only providing AIM, but also how can I shift that mindset of my team? Because my student has to read across the school day and in many classrooms and many environments where they work with other educators. How can I shift their mindset? And then there may be some silos where there's the regular ed, there's the special ed, and then there's the IT. So you also have to break down those silos or those curriculum directors who are purchasing the curriculum. You have to make sure that they're looking at things and making sure that they're purchasing accessible education materials from the start, because that's really going to save you a lot of money, because time is money. And then how can I further support my education of my colleagues and even myself? So I went over a lot. Any thoughts on any of these questions? I know it's 4:30 and it's probably been a week. Any other thoughts on or questions about what we reviewed, or any thoughts or any questions on these 3 reflection questions? I'm here to answer them for you. We know we got a couple minute late start, so we're technically kind of on time right now. But I'm here to answer those for you or to share. Yes. So Kim, hard to troubleshoot right now, but maybe I can help. So she says, I scanned text and notes on my iPad, but it didn't offer the speak option. Am I missing something? So without seeing your iPad, this is my first tech support guess is, let me go back to that slide. Now you could do this on your phone too. Now, did you go into the scan and not just take a picture of it? That's my first suggestion. Now, make sure in your accessibility section on your iPad or phone, oh, you said iPad, that you have your speak selection on. So you'd go into accessibility, and then you would go into speak content and make sure that button is on. And I'll hang out with you for a minute, Kim, if you want to. Make sure that you scanned it and not just take a picture, that you chose that scan from the drop down, and 2, that your speech is on. Okay, this is what you should see, Kim, when you go into the accessibility section. Hop back over to my screen real quick. Oh shoot, I just lost it. Where did it go? I just had it open and I accidentally closed it. iPad accessibility. Okay, if you look here on the left and the right side, if you go to that accessibility in the speak selection, you want to make sure that's on. Do you see how it's over to the right? Don't worry about speak screen. That's something has to do more if you have vision issues. If you just want to select it like that, do the speak selection, and there you can change your voices, and there you can change your rate and choose to have it highlighted. Oh, perfect. Speak screen is going to read everything. I wouldn't have it speak screen unless you're working with someone who is blind or has low vision. If you're working with a student who has more of a reading disability, such as dyslexia, I would do the speak selection. Does that answer your question? Oh, yay, you got it. I don't know about amazing, but hopefully helpful, and you got it, so that's good. Now that will also read your emails, that will read websites and your text messages if you get them on your iPad. So that will not just read worksheets, but all those other things I just rattled off. And remember that for your phone too, and teach your students. Take care, everyone, and good luck. Don't hesitate to reach out with questions.